All right, so we are recording. There we go. The camera's good. Okay, so I'll just jump right in. So, Joe, I'm going to start with a pretty general question. It's a question that I like to ask all of my guests who are on this podcast. What does it mean to be a man today?
What does it mean to be a man today? Ah,
Yes, it's a big question.
um, right in the deep end. I think to be a man today is incredibly hard, but also incredibly simple and easy. So what I mean by that is the majority of men are finding life extremely difficult, extremely tough, I would say. On the whole, if they're not numbing themselves with distractions and with various coping mechanisms, I think a man that strips bare all of that stuff and just focuses purely on his mission will very quickly realize how fucking difficult the world is and how the world and society is set up to make men fail. Um, so, when you develop an awareness of the way that the world works and the way society is set up, to be a man in this society is incredibly tough. But as I said, it's also very simple because we really, as men, we know what we should be doing. We know that we should be hitting the gym on a consistent basis. We know that we should be watching what we're eating and not binge eating junk food all the time. We know that we should be approaching women, speaking to women, developing traits that are attractive to women like self-discipline, like taking risks. We know that we should be trying to build our finances. So whilst it's incredibly difficult and tough, it's also simple in the sense that if you actually look for opportunities, if you're open to growth and to self-improvement and self-development, then there's a lot of resources out there for you as a man to improve every single area of your life, whether it's dating, whether it's with your physique, whether it's business, finances. There's so much out there nowadays to help men to get to that like top, let's say 10%. So it's really about, I think, firstly developing awareness of what society is really like, how the world really works, and then second, taking action on the things you need to be taking action on.
I couldn't agree more with everything you just said there. I really like what you said about how it's very simple in principles to be a man, but to actually be able to execute those principles in the way the world works, it's actually quite difficult. And I think that can be kind of like the true test of like being a man in the world that we live in today. And I kind of want to direct the conversation in that direction because we really do live in a time where, like you said, we have an abundance of information for men about how to achieve that top 10% level in their fitness, their relationship, their social skills, their money, everything. But it still seems like society is set up in a way that doesn't really favor men to reach that level in a way and really embrace that masculinity that's going to take them in that direction. I'm curious to know from your own, maybe your own journey, from your own experience working as a coach, what obstacles do you think are in the way within society that prevent men from really embracing that masculine side of themselves and achieving that top level?
Yeah, so I would say for myself on a personal level, but I know this, you can extrapolate this to every man really, or to a lot of men, is the kind of feminization of men. This happens, over a long period of time. It's not just been in the last 5 years or so with the, um, big big emphasis on like woke culture and mainstream talking about toxic masculinity and all the rest of it. But it's been happening for a long time, like for at least the last like 20, 30 years, maybe 40 years, in the feminization of men to basically create a society where men and women are the same and have the same roles. Um, and I think part of the challenge as a man, and that I've experienced as well, is kind of unlearning a lot of the stuff that I've learned about how to really operate as a man and what's actually going to get you results. Because, as I said, society is set up in a way that it wants men to fail in every single department in life. It wants you to have scarcity in the dating market. It wants you to struggle with your finances. It wants you to not be in great shape. All of these traits that are termed as toxic masculinity in psychology, which is such a huge, I don't want to call it industry or whatever you want to call it, but it seeps down all the way from the top and goes into every single system that we know in the world, whether it's social media, whether it's schools, education, workplace. All of this stuff is filtrated down all of the systems. So if you're just an average man who spends his time on social media, scrolling through social media, watching Netflix, going to a 9 to 5 job, the chances are every single piece of information that you're putting into your mind has been kind of molded in a way to feminize you. So it's kind of getting into that kind of matrix level stuff, but that's really what's taken place. So yeah, as I said, it's unlearning a lot of the beliefs around what it means to be a man, what is acceptable, what is okay, learning what the opposite of a feminized man is, which is obviously a very masculine man, and learning to give yourself permission as a man to become that man and to be that man and to step into the shoes of that man, regardless of sort of opinions and judgments. You're going to get a lot of, your family might not support you, your friends might not support you, people on social media might not support you, but as long as you know your path and where you're going, which is ultimately for me what it means to be a man, is as long as you know what that is, then you can give yourself permission to become that man, to be that man.
Yeah, I think that was really beautifully said. I think you really encapsulated a lot with everything you just said there. And one interesting direction I want to go in, but I don't want to get too far into this because it's easy to go down a rabbit hole in this, is there's a lot of conspiracy theories, let's call it, about why society is afraid of masculine men and why companies thrive on men acting in a more feminine, insecure way. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious to know why you think that society is kind of favoring this direction of like the feminization of men, because I completely agree it's going in that direction. But what advantages do you think that it has in society if men are becoming less like men?
I love that question. That's a great question. Um, so if you look at society, over the course of history, there's always been hierarchies. There's always been, people at the top and people at the bottom, and it all comes down to influence and it comes down to power. So if you look at the world, who's actually controlling the world? Well, it's billionaires. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk about any names or any companies or anything like that because I don't really want to get shadow banned again. um, But the way that works is that, you know, when you're a billionaire and you have everything that you want, you know, you have so much money that you can buy everything in the world. Well, what's next after that? Well, it's being able to control people. Um, and you know, there's a few good people out there. Like, I'm not demonizing rich or wealthy people at all. You know, there's people out there that will give back to society and use their money, their power to empower people. But unfortunately, the way the world is at the moment is it's controlled by billionaires that you know have evil agendas, and their agenda is really to destroy masculinity. And the reason that they want to do that is obviously because if you have masculine, strong men, they come together, they group together because that's what men have always done throughout history, and they can pose an opposition to the higher forces and the higher powers. Obviously, you destroy masculinity, you make men weak, you make them feminine, you make them submissive to society, submissive to women. So they have to shut themselves down. They have to silence themselves. You know, when they make that happen, there's no opposition. There's no confrontation, so they can continue to go about doing whatever they want to do. And for them, they're not necessarily that focused on humanity. They're not that focused on people's quality of life and all the rest of it. It's kind of like a game. It's a bit of a game to these guys, which is why I'm very passionate about sharing my message, but also talking about those sorts of things, because I think if as a man you don't have awareness of how evil the higher powers are and the direction that we're going in as humanity, as manhood, you know, then you'll just end up going down a path of a meaningless path, right? Where you're not really serving humanity. You're not doing anything good for anyone. You're on this kind of selfish path. You know, the whole kind of Andrew Tate philosophy, which is, you know, get as rich as you can, buy as many supercars as you can, be surrounded by as many beautiful women as you can. And I think he was kind of a bit of a decoy, or I don't know if you have any conspiracy theories about Andrew Tate, but I think he was kind of put in there to disrupt things. Because again, that's another thing that the higher powers absolutely love. They love disruption and they love chaos, because when you have disruption and chaos, you can't strategically organize anything that's going to be like an attack or something against what they're doing. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting perspective. And it kind of also aligns with what I think as well, in that when you have a society where men are completely feminized, it does pose a much lesser risk to people in higher power. You know, I'm not saying that this is my agenda, but if I had the agenda of like maintaining power for as long as possible, I think a really big threat to that would be other men, to be honest, and masculine men taking over that power. And it's both at the same time for me sad, but also quite smart that they're making this their primary mission, kind of to destroy masculinity, because it kind of makes sense given their goal. Um, so we kind of talked about a little bit about how men have been feminized in the world today and how that's kind of like the current state of masculinity. But what I like to think is that most guys in their life at a certain point sort of have a wake up moment, particularly around women, where they realize how they were taught to be around women and how they were taught to date women doesn't actually work. It doesn't make sense. It just kind of leads to women rejecting them and ghosting them, whatever. So I'm curious to know if you were always having this mindset around women, this like successful masculine way that you're showing up around women, or if you were kind of like me, taught to be like a more beta version around women. And did you have like a wake up moment that kind of made you realize, like, oh shit, this is not the way I should be around women?
Mm. Yeah, I would say like I always struggled quite a lot with women, especially when I was younger. Like I didn't have masculine traits. Obviously, I've worked on developing those, but I didn't understand like the dynamic really between men and women. Honestly, I was kind of afraid of women. I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of saying something that might be kind of taken in the wrong way, that they might react to, or um, that I might get called out for. All of these sort of things that stop men from, for example, flirting and being suggestive and these sorts of things because they're afraid of what the woman's going to say, like, oh my god, like I can't believe you said that, or something like that, right? But I think the most important thing is obviously to develop yourself into a masculine man first. Because if you try a lot of these things and you're not in good shape, you don't look good, you don't dress well, all of these things that make you give you the opportunity to speak to a woman, and she's like kind of giving you like a what's the word, like a blank slate. Like she's attracted to you, and then obviously you have the opportunity to either uh, do well, to like perform well, to succeed, or to fuck it up and mess up. But if you're not, you don't even have the opportunity because the basic level of attraction isn't there. Then you are going to be bombarded with rejections, with women being even repulsed by you, which is a crazy, crazy world. And yeah, this is where it comes down to like um, changing the way that you're approaching women, really, in terms of your mindset. Because we've been taught as men to put women on a pedestal, particularly to pedestalize pretty and beautiful women, to treat them like princesses, take them out all of these places and spend all this money on them and try and impress them and always try and be like the perfect gentleman and always agreeing with everything that they say. And it's a very interesting time to be alive in the dating marketplace because whilst guys are being conditioned to be, let's say, beaters, to be simps, women are being conditioned in the complete opposite direction to be masculine and to try to get as much value and resources from men as they can. So it creates like a massive massive divide, um, which I think it just means the men get treated like shit and women become incredibly entitled.
Definitely, man. I think like just for me seeing that trend kind of exist, I've seen it a lot, and I'm not sure about you, but I'm guessing you were raised in the West, similar to me. I was raised in Canada. I definitely had that experience dating women from more Western countries, like Canada, America, parts of Europe, where I found that that mentality was really predominant, where women were kind of conditioned since they were younger that they can do anything, they don't need a man, there's no need to be reliant on a man, which I think kind of creates a messed up view for women. And at the same time, men are being taught that they should be soft and submissive and weak. And this kind of like causes a negative spiral for both people in the wrong direction. You're somebody like me who, lives in Asia. Um, my girlfriend is from France. So I don't really have that experience so much of like dating in Asian cultures, but I'm curious to see from your perspective how you've noticed a difference in women from Western countries versus like where you are in Asia.
Yeah. So for me, there's been an absolute massive difference. So I mean, if you compare myself, um, you know, the version of me that was in the UK to the version of me in Asia, it's a very big difference. So in terms of the way that women um, react to me, my interactions with women, all the rest of it. Some of that has obviously got to be down to the fact that I've changed myself, and my mindset is different, and I'm approaching women in a different way, and all of the rest of it. But what I would say is, in terms of my interactions with women in Asia, they tend to be a lot more feminine, more submissive. Um, they have stronger morals as well. From what I've seen, and I think largely down to the fact that religion is, a central theme in Asia. Women are taught, to respect men. Man is the powerful force in the household. All of this stuff is very embedded in culture and society. So, when you're dating an Asian woman, you're not having to like train her. You're not trying to you're having to do all of these things to try and get her to become more submissive because she's naturally in that way. Obviously, you could say that the fact that obviously I'm from the UK and I've got a British accent and that I'm Western, and women probably might assume that I'm very rich. All of these sort of things that can play a part in women treating you better. But I would say, on the whole, Asian women are a lot more agreeable. They're a lot easier, a lot less of a headache than
Yeah.
Western women.
I once dated an Indonesian woman for a very short period of time, and I definitely noticed like right away like that difference of like agreeableness and submissiveness that comes so natural to them. And I think you made a really good point, which was that they have a deeply embedded respect for men that sometimes is missing in Western cultures. And I often think, like in Western cultures, maybe that doesn't exist because of absent fathers, because dads are not the best role models for women growing up in Western cultures, for instance. But I have found, and I don't know about you, but for me, like one of the biggest green flags when it comes to dating and finding someone in the long term is their view of men. And I think largely that comes from her view of her own father. If the father was
Mhm.
like an alcoholic and missing from the home and didn't show up in the way that he should have, then women might disrespect men because of that. Because why should they respect a man who's an alcoholic and who's never at home, anyways? So that's something interesting that you just reminded me of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also just their general interactions with men on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, their history, their relationship history as well, I think is very important. Not to say obviously the father relationship is very important because it sets the standard really for the men that they're going to allow into their life and the men that they're going to date. But I think with social media nowadays playing such a huge role, is that even if you have like a really strong father relationship, it's very easy to get conditioned by social media. If you're active a lot, say that you're a beautiful girl or you're a pretty girl, you've got a lot of followers on Instagram, or you're posting content on a regular basis. Maybe you're in good shape as well. You're training. You're going to get flooded with DMs, flooded with guys that are wanting to take you out, to spend money on you, all the rest of it. So um, I think that exists everywhere in the world, whether you're in Asia or whether you're in the West. So I think it's incredibly important to have masculine voices like me and yourself, um, you know, educating men as to how to actually operate themselves with women in a way that's not going to get them um, used and taken advantage of. Because I can't speak for you, obviously, but the worst thing for me is to feel disrespected. I think that's when you're a masculine man and you feel disrespected, that's probably the worst thing that you can experience. So teaching men to respect themselves um, in the world and also in dating as well, because a lot of women will allow. Sorry, you broken up a bit there, I think.
All good. I'm still here. And no worries. I can
Okay,
just cut out this part, so it's
all
fine.
good. Yeah, a lot of women will allow a guy to to provide for them for, years upon years, and the attraction might not be there. She might be entertaining other guys. Um, and women don't like to leave relationships a lot of the time. They kind of, in a really evil, cruel way, they want to treat a guy as badly as possible to get him to leave. But the problem is, a lot of guys won't leave because they don't respect themselves, and maybe they think they can't get anyone better. Um, and maybe they delude themselves that the relationship isn't that bad, or they try and put the rose tinted glasses on and think that she's the perfect angel. So yeah, I think voices like mine and yourself are incredibly important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. Um, so, based on that and based on your experience dating and coaching other men, I might get in trouble based on what your answer is because I mentioned to you I'm in a relationship. Do you think that men in today's world should even be getting into relationships? Or do you think for their own sake they should be staying single? Or do you think it's kind of an in between, depends kind of answer?
I think that really depends on where you're at as a man. I think it depends on your stage of life. I do think it's important for all men to get like some level of experience with women. To create some level of like sexual abundance for themselves, just so that they know that if this relationship goes south, then I'm going to be fine. I can go out and date other women. It's not a problem. But also so that they can kind of measure the way that they're treated by that woman versus the way they've been treated by other women. So if you don't have limited experience, then you don't have very much to go on. But I think also in terms of just general confidence and how you show up in the world as a man when you know that you have a lot of options and that you have sexual abundance. I think is very, very different to someone who lacks experience with women. Um, but I do think there is um, a point at which you know having multiple women and sleeping with multiple women and just being a fuck boy, basically trying to sleep with as many women as possible. I think there's a time and place for it, but I think there's a point at which that stops being meaningful and stops being enjoyable, and also stops you as a man from reaching the next like level of your purpose. Because I do think that it is our role as men to create families, to create strong families that are going to be a powerful force in society as well. So, but I do think, like for the majority of men, I would say to be in a relationship in your 20s is probably not the best of ideas because you haven't developed the traits that are essential for you to really to be able to perform at the highest level as a man, in every single area, not just in business and finances. But I think like late 20s, early 30s, if you feel like you're ready to settle down into a relationship and try and take a relationship to the next level, then yeah, I support that as well.
I think that's great. That's great advice. Like I think I definitely can align with that. Where most men, I think, either get into relationships prematurely because they're trying to fill some need or because they don't want to be lonely or whatever. And on the flip side, you have a lot of men who just get burned continuously throughout their life, and maybe they're 40 years old and giving up on dating and whatnot. It's definitely two things I've seen in my work as a relationship coach. And I'm curious to know as well, in your own field of work, what are some common mistakes that you see guys making in their relationships? Like if you could identify some common themes that you've seen in your work.
I would say I think the biggest one is just not understanding female nature, and what women what makes women happy, because the this is like the fundamental lie that we're told in society is that a happy wife equals a happy life. And that's ingrained in like all the romance movies, ingrained in like everything that you see on social media that's romantic and all the rest of it. Like romance is for women. It's not for men. Like a woman doesn't want a man who's going to be romantic all the time and be this soft gentle guy all the time. Obviously, there is a time and a place for doing that, like because it does help with attraction and seduction, and obviously, there needs to be emotional connection as well between a man and woman. But that lie of happy wife, happy life, is ingrained in a lot of men's mindsets. Actually, a woman is most happy when the man is happy, when he's focusing on himself, when he's successful, when he is full of positive energy, abundance. Not to say that he's necessarily like sleeping with other women, but uh, the woman can tell that he's attractive to other women. So she kind of sees him as being the prize, right? And that's when a woman is happiest. When she's got the guy that every other woman wants. She's got a successful guy that can provide for her. She's got a guy who can satisfy her in the bedroom, which is another incredibly important thing that, again, is a lie that we're told, especially in Western society, that women don't care about sex and that it's not important, and don't sexualize women. All of these things that are again ingrained into society to stop men from again like from being in their primal masculine, which is to spray their seed as far and wide as possible to carry on their bloodline and their legacy. Like that's evolution. That's how we're wired as men. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that we should all just be like primal males for our entire life, obviously, because it's also in terms of evolution, like to build a family and to raise kids and to pass something good on for society is also important. But that's not like it's not the way that we're naturally wired as men, and we've been conditioned into a very different way of thinking about women and thinking about sex, which is kind of the opposite to our evolution. To sorry, can you repeat the last bit? To improve. So I think first of all, don't watch porn. Quit watching porn. So I think that is important, and the reason I say it's important is because we as men pedestalize beautiful women, um, but a woman that's beautiful doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to be a good person to have in your life. Doesn't mean that she's going to treat you well. So I think it's very, very important for men to take beauty off of the pedestal, um, because this actually makes you a lot more attractive to beautiful women. Because when you're able to approach a beautiful woman, you're able to have like a normal conversation with her, all the rest of it, without fluffing your words, without getting nervous, all the rest of it. She just kind of feels like, oh, this is a guy that knows how to speak to women. This is a guy who speaks to beautiful women on a regular basis. Like it's no big deal. Um, and when it comes to attracting women, it's all about making them feel comfortable and making them feel safe. So if you're showing up in a confident way, you're able to have a decent conversation with a beautiful woman, then you're going to get a lot more attraction there. So taking beauty off of the pedestal by not necessarily always going for the woman that you find the most attractive, prioritizing your experience in the dating world, because like the reality is that these, let's say a woman who makes good money, is beautiful, is in good shape, all of these sort of things. She's going to have that very strong, independent mindset. She's going to be looking for a top 10% guy. So if you're not in that category yet, then you're going to always struggle with those types of women. So to you either left with two options, which is really to either struggle in your dating life or get into a relationship and play the role of the provider, where she's basically going to use you for all of your money and all of your time and all of your resources. So my option would be to gain experience. I've slept with like fat women. I've slept with women who haven't been beautiful. And to be honest with you, like sex is sex at the end of the day, but it is important for us men to having regular sex, because it increases our testosterone levels. Loads of different benefits. Like I don't know if you heard this. Like if you kiss someone for like longer than 5 seconds, it increases your dopamine levels by a certain amount, like 10% or something ridiculous like that. But it's very important, obviously, for men to have that intimacy and affection in their life. So yeah, as I said, like taking beauty off the pedestal, and I think that starts with not watching porn, but obviously not scrolling on Instagram, like looking at sexy women all the time. Anything that's conditioning your mind to put beauty on a pedestal. That would probably be my best advice. Yeah, all good. I appreciate it.